The Switch is honestly one of the best consoles ever for Metroidvanias. The library is packed, so today we're counting down my top 15 picks. Whether you love tight combat, deep lore, or just getting lost in a beautiful world, there's something on this list for you. Let's get into it. Bloodstained is basically what you get when the guy who made Castlevania Symphony of the Night decides to make his own game outside of Konami. Koji Igarashi poured everything into this one. You play as Miriam, a woman with shards of demon crystal fused to her body, slowly being consumed by it. She's trying to stop a summoning ritual that's unleashing demons across the land, but the deeper you go, the more the story gets personal. Gameplay-wise, it's a massive castle to explore, and the big mechanic here is collecting shards from enemies you defeat. Each shard gives you a new ability. Some are for combat, some for traversal, and you can mix and match them however you like. The build variety is ridiculous. You can craft weapons, cook food for buffs, and grind to experiment with different ability combos. It's very much a love letter to classic Castlevania, but with modern production values, crisp 3D visuals, and hours of content. Crypt Custodian is a top-down Metroidvania, and that alone makes it stand out from basically everything else on this list. You play as Pluto, a black cat who just died and accidentally destroys some statues belonging to Kendra, the guardian of the afterlife. As punishment, he's sentenced to clean up the underworld for eternity. Not exactly the afterlife he was hoping for. The goal is to explore the afterlife, make friends with the ghosts and creatures you meet, and eventually find a way to break into Kendra's castle and get out. Combat uses Pluto's broom as a weapon, and the top-down view adds bullet hell elements to fights. Enemies fire patterns you have to dodge while you're swinging. You unlock passive upgrades similar to Hollow Knight's charm system, letting you build your playstyle. It's approachable, charming, and never punishing. The vibes are cozy, the world is full of personality, and it's one of the best options if you're newer to the genre. Nine Souls comes from Red Candle Games, a studio known for horror, and somehow they pivoted completely and made one of the best Metroidvanias of 2024. The setting is Taopunk, a blend of Taoism, Asian mythology, and cyberpunk sci-fi that you really haven't seen before in a game like this. You play as Yi, a warrior cat who was betrayed and left for dead by his own comrades. Years later, he's woken up by a young boy, and now he wants revenge on the Nine Souls, the powerful rulers of New Kunlun. The combat is Sekiro-inspired at its core. You parry, deflect, and tag enemies with Taoist talismans before unleashing a charged explosion on them. It's aggressive, precise, and deeply satisfying once it clicks. New abilities open up new areas in classic Metroidvania fashion, and the boss fights are some of the most intense in the genre. Metroid Dread is the real deal, a first-party Nintendo Metroidvania that plays like a masterclass in the genre. You're playing as Samus Aran on a mission to a planet called ZDR to investigate a signal, and things go sideways fast. The story ties into the larger Metroid lore in a big way, and longtime fans will find it especially satisfying. But even if you've never played a Metroid game before, it works as a standalone experience. The big gameplay hook is the Emmy robots. These near-indestructible machines hunt you down in specific zones, and you have to avoid them or time a very precise counter to survive. Outside of those sequences, it's a tight, fast-paced action platformer. Samus gains new abilities as you explore: ice missiles, flash shifts, speed booster, each one opening up sections of the map you couldn't reach before. The controls are some of the most polished in the genre. Everything feels snappy and responsive. The Messenger starts off looking like a classic NES-style ninja platformer, and it genuinely is that for a while. You're a ninja, carrying a scroll that might save your clan from a demon army, running and slashing through tight, well-designed levels. But at some point the game flips on you, and I won't say exactly how, because the moment it happens is something you should experience blind. What I will say is that the game turns into a full-on Metroidvania, and the way it transitions between its two different styles is clever and funny and weird all at once. The writing has a real sense of humor, a shopkeeper character who breaks the fourth wall constantly and has full-on conversations with you about game design. Combat is built around a mechanic where hitting enemies or certain objects in the air resets your jump, letting you chain together long aerial combos across whole sections of a level. Axiom Verge 2 takes the series in a new direction. You play as Indra Chaudhary, a billionaire who travels to Antarctica and ends up in a parallel world called the Breach, searching for her missing daughter. The world is alien, strange, and full of ruins that suggest something massive happened here long ago. This entry leans harder into exploration and atmosphere over combat. You can hack enemies and environmental objects, turning them into tools or allies. There's a drone mechanic that lets you send a small bot through tight passages to access hidden areas, a genuinely clever system. The world feels lonely and mysterious, and the lore drips out slowly, rewarding players who pay attention. It's a slower, more contemplative game than the first, and some people prefer that. If you want a Metroidvania that focuses more on curiosity and discovery than action, Axiom Verge 2 scratches that itch very well. Blaster Master 03 is the conclusion to a trilogy and one of the most underrated Metroidvanias on Switch. You play as Jason and Eve, two people caught in an interdimensional conflict that spans multiple realities. The gameplay is split between two modes: top-down tank combat, where you drive a powerful vehicle called Sophia through wide, destructible environments, and side-scrolling action, where you jump out on foot to explore dungeons and fight bosses up close. The mix of these two gameplay styles makes it feel fresh constantly. The story in this third entry goes to some genuinely dark places and pays off years of setup from the previous games in the series. It's not the most visually impressive game on this list, but mechanically it's tight, fun, and endlessly creative with its level design. Fans of retro-style action games will find a lot to love here. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was one of the biggest surprises of 2024. You play as Sargon, a warrior from an elite group called the Immortals, sent to rescue the kidnapped prince from a cursed mountain called Mount Kof. The mountain exists outside of normal time, and that becomes central to both the story and the gameplay. You unlock time-based abilities that let you rewind, dash through time, and leave echoes of yourself in the past to trigger switches simultaneously. The combat is fast and stylish, pulling inspiration from arena fighters with combos and special moves that feel genuinely satisfying to pull off. The map is huge and full of secrets, and the game includes a helpful system where you can take screenshots of areas you can't access yet and pin them to the map as reminders. It's polished, accessible, mechanically rich, and a full comeback for a franchise that had been dormant for years.
Treasures and unbeaten paths to discover. Sargon's agility lets you move fluidly through the world, overcoming its numerous traps and...
SteamWorld Dig 2 is about a steam-powered robot named Dorothy, who goes searching for her missing friend Rusty in a world built on layers of underground tunnels, ruins, and ancient machines. The digging mechanic is the core of the game. You literally carve your way through the earth, collecting resources, upgrading your tools, and burrowing deeper to find new areas. It's oddly satisfying in a way that's hard to explain until you're doing it. New gear like a hookshot and jet boots open up platforming possibilities and make revisiting old areas genuinely exciting. The story is told simply but effectively, and the world is warm and charming. It's one of the more approachable games on this list, shorter than most, not punishingly difficult, but full of that rewarding exploration loop that defines the genre. A perfect entry for people new to Metroidvanias. Salt and Sanctuary is a dark, brutal, and deeply atmospheric 2D action RPG that takes the soul of Dark Souls and translates it into a side-scrolling format. You play as a sailor, shipwrecked on a cursed island, and from there, it's all grim dungeons, terrifying bosses, and a lore that reveals itself through item descriptions and environmental details. The combat is deliberate. You have a stamina bar, enemies hit hard, and learning attack patterns is essential. The RPG system is complex, letting you build a character around swords, sorcery, or hybrid styles. Death drops your salt currency and sends you back to the last sanctuary checkpoint. It's unforgiving, atmospheric, and genuinely haunting in its art direction. The world feels decayed and wrong in exactly the right way. If you enjoy Souls games and want that experience in 2D form on your Switch, this game delivers it completely.
So you don't quite, you kind of have a little bit of ambiance noise, but most of it is quiet. Oh, I wanted an instant kill.
Ender Magnolia is the follow-up to Ender Lilies, and it builds on everything that game did well. You play as Lilac, a young girl who wakes up in an underground laboratory with no memories. The world above has been devastated by a phenomenon called the Blight, which transforms living things into monsters. Lilac can form bonds with homunculi artificial beings, and fight using their abilities as her own. The combat is fluid and stylish, mixing melee attacks, ranged options, and magical abilities that you gradually unlock. The atmosphere is melancholy and beautiful, told through sparse dialogue, environmental storytelling, and item descriptions. The music is gorgeous and fits the somber tone perfectly. Exploration feels meaningful because every room might hold a new ability or a piece of the story. It's one of the finest atmospheric Metroidvanias available on Switch, and a genuine improvement over its already excellent predecessor. The Castlevania Advance Collection bundles 4 classic games in one package: Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, Aria of Sorrow, and Dracula X. These are the G, B, A, and SNES era Castlevanias that helped define the Metroidvania formula in the early 2000s. Each game has its own mechanics and feel. Circle of the Moon has a card-based magic system. Harmony of Dissonance is fast and flashy. Aria of Sorrow introduces soul absorption, where you take abilities from defeated enemies. And Dracula X is a more traditional action platformer. All 4 run smoothly on Switch, with rewind functionality and display options. They hold up surprisingly well, especially Aria of Sorrow, which many consider among the best Castlevanias ever made. If you're a fan of the genre and haven't played these, this collection is essential. Bow, Path of the Teal Lotus is one of the most visually distinctive games on Switch. You play as Bow, a small, fox-like spirit who wields a cherry blossom staff and traverses a world based on Japanese folklore. The art is hand-drawn and absolutely gorgeous. Floating islands, ancient temples, enchanted forests, all painted in vivid, flowing detail. The staff is your primary tool for both combat and traversal. You can bounce off enemies and objects mid-air to gain height, chain jumps, and reach platforms that feel initially unreachable. It rewards mastery and momentum. The story draws from yokai mythology and unfolds through encounters with spirits and gods inhabiting the world. Combat is precise and satisfying, and the bosses are designed around the movement system in clever ways. It's a game that feels distinct from everything else on this list, and that freshness makes it stand out. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is one of the most emotionally charged games in the genre. You play as Ori, a small spirit guardian on a journey through a fractured forest world after getting separated from the family you built in the first game. Everything about this game is beautiful. The hand-painted visuals, the orchestral score, the fluid movement that feels like controlling a beam of light. Ori moves with an elegance that few games in any genre can match. New abilities layer on top of each other to create a movement system that becomes genuinely thrilling to use. Combat is more developed than in the original, giving Ori actual attack options and a skill tree. The story is simple, but hits hard in its final moments. Will of the Wisps is one of those games that reminds you why games can be art. It's a masterpiece of atmosphere, movement, and emotional storytelling. Animal Well is unlike anything else on this list. You play as a small blob creature that wakes up inside a well in a surreal, dark, underground ecosystem filled with strange animals and hidden mechanisms. There are no combat abilities. You survive through wit and items like firecrackers, bubbles, and a flute. The world is dense with secrets, and most of them don't reveal themselves unless you're paying very close attention. This game is built for discovery. Its deepest puzzles aren't even accessible on a first playthrough. They require community collaboration to unravel. Every screen hides something. The atmosphere is tense and mysterious, lit by bioluminescent creatures in a world that feels both beautiful and threatening. It's the kind of game that stays in your head for days because you keep thinking about what you missed. If you want a Metroidvania that challenges your brain more than your reflexes, Animal Well is one of the most unique experiences in the genre. Blasphemous 2 builds on the dark religious imagery and brutal gameplay of the first game, but improves nearly everything. You return to Custodia, a land cursed by an omnipresent divine force called the Miracle, and follow the Penitent One as he tries to stop a new catastrophe from being born. The world is drenched in dark, Catholic-inspired imagery. Flagellance, corruption, sainthood twisted into horror. Combat now starts you with 3 weapons, a sword, a mace, and a twin set of bells, each with distinct movesets and parry mechanics. Swapping between them based on situation is essential. New traversal abilities open up the map in satisfying ways. The boss fights are spectacular, large, grotesque, and imaginative. The pixel art is jaw-dropping in its detail. The story is cryptic but rewarding for players who engage with it. Blasphemous 2 is a serious, uncompromising Metroidvania for people who want dark atmosphere and demanding combat in equal measure. Hollow Knight is the benchmark. Set in Hallownest, an ancient underground kingdom of insects, now fallen into ruin and infection, you play as a small, nameless knight who descends into the depths and slowly uncovers what destroyed the civilization. The world is enormous and interconnected, built from dozens of distinct environments that each have their own enemies, secrets, and atmosphere. Combat is precise and punishing. You use a nail to fight and soul energy to heal or cast spells. The charm system lets you customize your playstyle with equipable items that give passive bonuses. The boss fights are legendary in the genre for their difficulty and design. The story is almost entirely told through environment, item descriptions, and quiet interactions you piece it together yourself. The art is beautiful, the music is incredible, and the sense of discovery never fades. Dead Cells does something most Metroidvanias don't. It adds a roguelite structure to the formula. You play as a consciousness that inhabits a dead body and tries to fight its way out of a plague-ridden island prison. Every run, you die. You start over, but you keep permanent upgrades unlocked with cells collected from enemies, slowly making your character stronger. The combat is fast, brutal, and endlessly satisfying. Weapons feel distinct and powerful, and the game rewards experimentation with build combinations that synergize in surprising ways. Each run through the same areas feels different because of randomized layouts and weapon drops. The difficulty is high but fair, and the loop of dying, upgrading, and trying again is deeply compelling. Dead Cells has received years of free and paid updates that add new biomes, weapons, and bosses. Ori and the Blind Forest, Definitive Edition. The game that many people point to as the moment indie Metroidvanias became something special. You play as Ori, a small forest spirit separated from the guardian tree Sane in a dying forest. The world is breaking down, water is gone, creatures are suffering, and the cause traces back to a tragedy involving a creature called Kuro. The movement is precise and builds into one of the most joyful traversal systems in gaming, especially once the Spirit Flame and Bash ability come into play. The Bash lets you redirect any projectile or enemy to propel yourself through the air, and mastering it is one of the purest pleasures the genre has to offer. The story is told without a single word of spoken dialogue, entirely through animation and emotion, and it still manages to genuinely move you. The Definitive Edition adds new areas and abilities. Hollow Knight Silksong released in September 2025 and immediately became one of the most talked about games of the year. You play as Hornet, the fierce hunter from the original game, who finds herself captured and brought to a completely new kingdom called Farloom, a place ruled by silk and song, filled with bug kingdoms, ancient rituals, and secrets tied to Hornet's own past. The world is massive, even bigger than Hallownest, and built with the same obsessive detail that made the original legendary. But Hornet is not the knight. She's faster, more acrobatic, and her combat kit is built around aggression and momentum. She heals almost instantly when you use the right tools, which changes the rhythm of combat significantly. There are over 200 enemies, side quests tracked through a journal, and a crafting system that lets you build weapons and traps from materials. That's the list. 20 Metroidvanias that prove the Switch is one of the best homes for the genre ever made. Whether you're new to it or a veteran, there's something on here for you. Drop your favorites in the comments, and subscribe if you want more lists like this.